Film with family. They love the family, they love the movies.
Hello and welcome to Film with Family. I'm Austin.
And I'm Zach.
And we are two cousins who like to talk about movies. And today we're talking to my dad, Glen Pruett, about the 1982 Les Blank documentary, Burden of Dreams, about the making of Fitzcarraldo with Werner Herzog.
Yeah, this is a favorite of your dad's and a favorite of yours, correct?
Yeah.
And it's new to me, but I had a great time watching it too.
And this episode is kind of an appetizer to a really exciting interview that we got with Harrod Blank, the son of Les Blank. So it's a family affair.
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll be airing that episode in 2 weeks with Harrod Blank about the restoration that he's been doing of Burden of Dreams, which will be premiering later this month in New York and then in Berkeley.
4K resolution, baby.
It's going to look beautiful.
Gonna sound beautiful.
It's going to be beautiful. And so in order to prime some of our listeners who maybe haven't seen the film, or maybe this is just a little 4th of July whistle to go out and watch Burden of Dreams before we air this interview with Harrod Blank.
July 17th, mark your calendars. Harrod Blank on Film with Family.
And that's just 2 days before it will premiere, the restoration 4K version in Dolby Surround Sound 5.1 in New York City.
All right, let's bring in Glen.
I need no introduction.
You're infamous on the pod.
Yeah. So, Dad.
Yeah.
We are here today to talk, finally, about Burden of Dreams by Les Blank.
It was a long wait. Yeah.
So, for those who don't know, Burden of Dreams is a documentary by Les Blank about the making of Werner Herzog's film Fitzcarraldo. Les Blank is a documentarian. We've talked about him before, actually, on our Belisaire episode. But he's well known for his films on traditional American music styles like Cajun music coming out of Louisiana and blues musicians such as Lightning Hopkins. He also made movies about cooking and was essentially a ethnographic documentarian. And so around the late 70s, Les Blank met the legendary and infamous German director Werner Herzog and was asked to document his new film, Fitzcarraldo, which would be set in the Amazonian jungle of Peru. So Burden of Dreams follows Herzog through this incredibly chaotic production. The film stops and starts multiple times. Actors get sick and replaced. They're constantly navigating the merciless and unpredictable terrain of the jungle and its people. But crucially, and to make it all the more complicated, Herzog insists on making a particular dream come true, which was to capture a 320-ton boat being dragged up and over a mountain. And so he practically does this within the film. So Burden of Dreams is so much more than just a behind-the-scenes documentary. It's about the harshness of the jungle, the indigenous people of Peru, and centrally, it's about an artist who will stop at nothing to make his vision a reality. So that's kind of an overview. But before we get into the details of the film, Dad, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you first got interested in Les Blank and Herzog and what's become a little bit of an obsession with these guys and their films.
Well, it started with you. And you are the person that you're the catalyst for my fixation on both these guys. And you had sent me Burden of Dreams some time ago, and I watched it and I loved it. Of course, I knew who Werner Herzog was, and I had seen some of his other stuff. I think I've seen other stuff with you, actually.
Yeah.
But then decided on my birthday one year, after you had given me the Burden of Dreams, for some reason, I decided that I wanted to make a relationship with Flowers Films. And so I called them.
And Flowers Films being Les Blank's film production company.
Right, right. And I did not know that he passed away in like 2014, I think.
13, yeah.
I called there and I said, is Les Blank there? And Harrod says, no, my father passed away. And I went, oh, I'm so sorry, but can we talk? I wanted to give myself a birthday gift, and I wanted you to send me the box set of Les Blank. And he was very, very nice to me. They said, well, you can order online. Well, I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to talk to them. I wanted to ask them what they have and, just sort of pick their brains and stuff. And they were very accessible to that. And so I talked to Harrod. He sent me the box set. I saw all that. And then I started to sort of pile on, I started to get, I knew that Les Blank had done a movie in Hawaii called Puamana, which Jim says means flower power. So Puamana is about Lahaina. And this was before the fire in Lahaina.
Wait, what's Lahaina?
Lahaina in Maui caught on fire, and there was a big fire, and 100 people died in the fire.
Is this like a town?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Puamana takes place in Lahaina.
Okay.
And so it's about this woman who does music with her family.
So you're a fan of Puamana?
Oh, I love this.
Mm-hmm.
It really affected me. And when Lahaina happened and all those people died and people lost their homes and they're still struggling with it. Anyway, but anyway, Les Blank.
Yeah. So you're a huge fan of Les Blank's work, obviously. And
yeah,
I had seen a lot of Les Blank's work in college. I loved the Lightning Hopkins movie, but once you made contact with Flowers Films and got the box set and all of that, and then I visited you in Hawaii, we sat down like a whole day while I was in Hawaii watching tons of his movies that are in that box set. I think we watched In Heaven There's No Beer, Garlic is as Good as 10 Mothers. We watched Maestro, which is one of my favorites of his.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's just great.
Not about Leonard Bernstein?
Not about Leonard Bernstein.
Okay.
No,
not that Maestro. It's called The Maestro: King of the Cowboy Artists, and it's about this kind of Southern artist who wears these incredibly tailored suits and makes sculptures and paintings, and he's a musician. He's just like this incredible Renaissance man.
Yeah, you got to see it, Zach. It's amazing. Amazing.
And so, Dad, I know that you had some things in mind about how you wanted to discuss Burden of Dreams and Fitzcarraldo and all of this. So where do you want to start?
Well, I would like to start off with something that this little speech that Herzog wrote in Conquest of the Useless. It's page 105. He wrote it in Iquitos in December 8th, 1980. And this was approximately 1 year after the project started. He writes that there has been constant daily problems.
And this is Conquest of the Useless is basically his diaries that he published from the making of Fitzcarraldo.
Right, right. And so he wrote this monologue, and I wanted to read it. A still day, sultry, inactivity piled on inactivity, clouds staring down from the sky, pregnant with rain. Fever, insects taking on massive proportions, The jungle is obscene. Everything about it is sinful. The voices in the jungle are silent. Nothing. The laundry on the line refuses to dry. As if part of a conspiracy, flies suddenly descend on the table, their stomachs taut and iridescent. Our little monkey was wailing in his cage. He looked and wailed right through me to some distant spot outside where his little heart hoped to find an echo. Nothing. I let him out, but he went back in. He went back into his cage. Now he continues to wail there. That's what I wanted to read. And the reason I wanted to read that was because it was not a good time. And of course, Les Blank pulls this out pretty strongly in Burden of Dreams, but he was going through hell.
Yeah.
And there were people that came to him and said, hey, just abandon the project. And he's like, how could I do that? If I did that, I'd be a man without dreams. I would rather walk into the jungle and just never come back.
Yeah.
He was obsessed with the project, and, good for him. Thank God we've got people like him.
What do you say? Fitzcarraldo was worth it? Because I have yet to see Fitzcarraldo. So I'm curious if you guys are fans of what all the struggle was trying to pay off for.
I liked it, it went through so many changes, they were thinking about casting Jack Nicholson as Fitzcarraldo. They wanted to do it. 20th Century Fox brought Herzog in and said, we want to do it at the Botanical Gardens, and we want to use a plastic ship, and we want to animate it that way. And he was like, no. And they said, well, why would you want to do it in the bad jungle? Why don't you do it in the good jungle? And Herzog just kind of looks at him and go, define a good jungle. Mm-hmm. And it was at that point where the switch was turned off with 20th Century Fox and Jack Nicholson.
The movie itself, though, like, do you like the final product?
I did. I like the whole idea of it. I like the whole idea of, bringing opera to the jungle with Caruso. I love that idea.
In the beginning of Burden of Dreams, Herzog himself gives a very good explanation of Fitzcarraldo and what the movie is all about and what they're there filming. So let's listen to that.
You wanted to know the story of Fitzcarraldo. It's a strange story, a little bit Sisyphus-like story, a story of challenge of the impossible. The title itself, I will start with that, is derived from an Irish name, Fitzgerald. The leading character's name is Brian Sweeney Fitzgerald, and since nobody can pronounce his name in the Amazon here, he calls himself Fitzcarraldo, and he also founds a town with the name Fitzcarraldo. There was a historical figure whose name was Carlos Fermin Fitzcarrald, a caoutchouc baron. I must say the story of this caoutchouc baron did not interest me so much. What interested me more was one single detail, that was that he crossed an isthmus from one river system into another with a boat. They disassembled the boat and put it together again on the other river. And that intrigued me to write a story about big opera in the jungle and about a man who wants to bring Caruso into Iquitos and build a huge opera house. And he fails to get the money for it, and so finally he decides to make his fortune as a robber baron. And he buys a territory which is out of reach because there are very, very strong rapids, and you can't move a big boat into the upper tributary. And for exploiting an area like this, you need a big boat for all the logistics and transports and so. And what he does actually is that he moves in a parallel tributary, because he knows there's one geographical point where the two river systems almost join. There's only 1 or 2 miles in between. And with the help of 1,100 savage Indians, he moves the boat across this mountain ridge. But it all fails because the Indians release the boat, they untie it, and it floats downstreams and it crashes through the rapids, and everything was in vain. And still, with that defeat, Fitzcarraldo is able to turn it in some kind of a victory, a very painful one. And that's basically the story of the film.
So there you have it. Basically, this is an original story by Werner Herzog, but loosely adapted from a real rubber baron in the Amazon. The movie, Fitzcarraldo, I would say it's good. I mean, especially, diving deep into Burden of Dreams, watching the actual product is very interesting in that context. I don't know if you didn't know this backstory, I don't know if it would have the same weight, but it's cool to have these two pieces that sort of are in contrast with each other.
Kind of in parallel with each other too.
Yeah. I mean, they're literally being shot at the same time. So, and there are shots in Burden of Dreams that they couldn't get, like the actual successful pull of the boat going up the mountain that you see in Burden of Dreams are the shots from Fitzcarraldo. And then also some of the like landscape shots like that you see in the very beginning of Burden of Dreams, like all the overhead kind of helicopter shots, those are in Fitzcarraldo, shot by Les Blank and kind of, borrowed. So, I mean, yeah, they're both borrowing from each other. I wouldn't really call this like a behind the scenes documentary, even though it is very much so. I think it tells its own story about the dream of pulling this boat up the mountain is Fitzcarraldo's dream fictionally, but it is actually Werner Herzog's dream. And so basically it's like Les Blank making the real Fitzcarraldo story, which is Werner Herzog's obsession with this image that's in his head.
Yeah.
And to that point, in the prologue of Conquest of the Useless, he's got this really great explanation of how the vision consumed him. And so he says, "A vision had seized hold of me, like the demented fury of a hound that had sunk its teeth into the leg of a deer carcass, and is shaking and tugging at the downed game so frantically that the hunter gives up trying to calm him. It was the vision of a large steamship scaling a hill under its own steam, working its way up a steep slope in the jungle, while above this natural landscape, which shatters the weak and the strong with equal ferocity, soars the voice of Caruso, silencing all pain and all voices of the primeval forest and drowning out all birdsong." So, Herzog, always a joy.
Yeah, but the one reason I wanted to read that little passage was earlier was because it's like a dichotomy to a difference between him and Les Blank. Blank is sort of this gentle giant in the background, sort of disappearing as the cameraman and just letting nature and people do their thing. And so and not complaining about it. I mean, it's just he's there, he's doing it, he's going to get some good stuff, and he's going to enjoy himself. And meanwhile, everything's going wrong for Herzog, and he's just a very angry person.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely seems bitter by the end of the film, but throughout the movie, he's like a very calm director. Like he doesn't seem like he is out of sorts or yelling at people or like
no,
freaking out. Like he's very chill.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
I think Maureen Gosling stated that she only saw him get angry one time, and he had plenty to be angry about. But he's a very complex. Both are very complex men, if you ask me.
Yeah. So Zach, I'm just curious what your relationship is with Herzog, or Les Blank, I guess, for that matter.
Yeah, I've seen more Herzog movies. I guess my first Les Blank was watching Spend It All when we did the Bellazaire episode last year
Hmm.
for Film with Family. And that was I think it was my introduction to him. And this is my second film of his, Burden of Dreams, that I just saw for the first time 2 nights ago. So I have a very
Hmm.
limited knowledge of him, but I enjoy his vibe.
And what about Herzog? Had you seen any of his films?
Yeah, well, I've seen Grizzly Man, and I saw the Nicolas Cage movie Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, where Nicolas Cage is very unhinged in that movie
Yeah,
in
great.
a great way. I also saw the Volcano movie, that documentary that he made. Is that called Inferno or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, all about volcanoes. That one's really good. And I also saw Aguirre, The Wrath of God, which I had confused in my head with Fitzcarraldo because I guess they're both jungle Klaus Kinski movies. And I was like, oh yeah, I've seen Fitzcarraldo. But no,
Hmm.
I actually just saw Aguirre, The Wrath of God.
Mm.
So I've still yet to see Fitzcarraldo, but I'll definitely watch it. I like Werner Herzog. I think
Yeah.
he's an interesting figure. I like him as an actor. So he'll pop up in The Mandalorian or weird places like that, and
Yeah.
he's always a great screen presence.
Yeah.
He recently did some narration for Conan O'Brien's travelogue show. I noticed recently, Conan
Yeah.
O'Brien Must Go, and that was
Yes.
that was that was a delight to hear him narrate on that.
Yeah. Made me laugh every single time. It's like the eyes of a clown.
The beady eyes of a clown.
Yeah.
So, Zachary, you saw Burden of Dreams. Did you happen to catch Herzog in the Detroit T-shirt?
Yeah. I was a big fan of all of his t-shirts in the movie. He's got great t-shirts, but yeah, the Detroit one, I was pretty interested in how he came upon that, or if he's a fan of Detroit.
Yeah, I'd seen the movie several times, and like night before last when I watched it again, I was like, "Oh my God, he's got a Detroit T-shirt on."
Yeah. There's one
Yeah,
kid wearing a Mickey Mouse disco shirt that I really loved.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then there's
and
John Travolta T-shirt.
yeah.
I think they wear t-shirts for the Les Blank movie. Garlic is as good as 10 Mothers. I feel like I,
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw a t-shirt for that film in there too.
Yeah, because it looks like the Herzog's wearing that shirt, and I think one of the translators is wearing it as well. So it seems like, I mean, that movie, Garlic is as good as 10 Mothers, another Les Blank documentary, came out at the same time that they were shooting Burden
Oh,
of
oh,
Dreams.
I
So
see.
it was
Yeah,
like their most recent film, so they probably
I
had made
see.
some t-shirts
Everybody
for
gets a
it.
T-shirt.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is crazy that Burden of Dreams and Fitzcarraldo, they both come out the same year, so you get like both sides of the story right away.
right. Another amazing thing about this movie and Fitzcarraldo is that this moment in time with these artists is so unbelievably well documented. You've got contemporaneous notes from Herzog, from Maureen Gosling, from Les Blank, tons of literature and diary entries and journals of everybody's perspective on the making of this film. So you can really peer deeply into, the day by day toil of making this film. And in the Criterion Collection, it actually comes with like an 80-page booklet of Maureen and Les's diaries. And, Les, throughout his diaries that are published here, he calls Herzog the mad Bavarian. He's like, I don't give a shit if this ship goes up the hill or not. He's kind of like, he's really kind of fed up with everything. Like, there's one line here where he says, I ceased to feel sorrow for Herzog's problems. He says he's not supposed to be in the jungle, thinks nature is vile and something to be conquered. typical hubris that calls for tragic punishment by the gods. And that's Les Blank about Herzog. And, like another line here, I'm tired of it all, and I could care less if they move this stupid ship or finish the fucking film. This was taking its toll on everybody who was there. The natives were there for like longer than they needed to be. I think they said 3 months and it ended up being 6 months. So this was just a film that plagued with issues.
Yeah, see, it's interesting in the movie. You don't really know how Les Blank feels about the production at all. He doesn't really. I mean, you do get some narration, but it is very just fact based, and it's like not really like putting any subjectivity into it. It's just kind of impressive that the film just feels as objective as it does, even though he was in it and like felt such disdain about the whole process at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it is a conflicting movie, I think, like for a good reason, because I mean, the ethics of this film are very complex because you do have Herzog, going out of his way to make sure that everybody is paid. But at the same time, yeah, he's making them do this insane stuff that is just incredibly dangerous. You have that one moment where the guy says there's a 70% chance that this could end in catastrophe and 60 people could die.
Yeah,
But
with
Herzog,
the winches and stuff. Yeah, like how it could easily collapse and domino effect and take people out with it.
And it came close. It came very close to doing that too.
yeah.
That coupling broke off and near tragedy, but he kept going.
Yeah. The other element of Fitzcarraldo and partially of Burden of Dreams is obviously Klaus Kinski, who Herzog had a lot of film experience with. Like he was kind of his leading man in a few of films.
4 films, yeah.
So Gary, Wrath of God, Nosferatu, Wojciech.
Have you guys seen Nosferatu?
Yeah, I can't watch it. I can't watch him.
Why?
I really have a hard time watching Klaus Kinski, just knowing what an asshole he was. I just cringe. He was just terrible, a terrible person.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna get to see more of Klaus Kinski being crazy in Burden of Dreams. Like I thought that's what kind of I was expecting out of the movie, but there isn't that much footage of him like losing it.
They actually did film a lot of Kinski's tantrums, but Les and Maureen and I think Herzog had to say a little bit in it as well, is that they just all kind of felt like it would sensationalize the picture and take away from what they were actually trying to build, which was, the struggle of the creation of the film, and not just have this sensationalized, like screaming matches that are in it, because you can see some footage of that Herzog ended up making a documentary about his relationship to Klaus Kinski in a movie called My Best Fiend, and Herzog asked Les Blank for the footage of his tantrums, and so if you watch that movie, you'll see some of those freakouts.
In the special features on the DVD of Burden of Dreams that I have, there is a segment called Fight, and it's between the production manager, Walter Saxer,
right,
and Klaus Kinski, and it's over food.
Okay, but it's just on the special features. It's not in the movie itself.
Yeah, it's like a deleted scene. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it shows Klaus Kinski in all of his fucking glory.
Yeah.
He's just a pig,
Schrei ich oder schrei ich nicht? Und du sagst es mir nicht, aber ich schrei aber nicht. Leg mich doch am Arsch weg. Der Moment ist überhaupt gekommen, wo ich dir in die Fresse haue. Was? Diesmal schlage ich in die Fresse, darauf hast du dich verlassen, du. Diesmal sitzt in dem Kostüm in deiner scheiß Karre in Holland.
This quarrel here, filmed as an aside, was with our capable production manager Walter Saxer. By some rare chance, I was not the brunt of it this time.
Euer Gewichse mit eurer Freundschaft. Ich möchte keinen Dreck. Wir brauchen einen Fotografen.
You know, it's worth seeing. You know, Klaus Kinski is just an animal, just a fucking pig. You know,
What's he yelling about?
Food. He's basically, see, Walter Saxer's wife was cooking food for the whole team. And, you know, Klaus Kinski threw a fit about the food, and, you know, he shoved it in Walter Saxer's face. And Walter Saxer was like, I'm going to fucking kick your ass, man. Just go ahead. Hit me. Come on. Come on. Come on. You know, but I've really lost any respect that I had for Klaus Kinski, really.
Okay. I
Over
thought
the
you were going to say you
years.
couldn't watch Nosferatu because you're too scared.
No, fuck that.
Austin, do you hate Kinski as well?
I think that he's kind of an essential element to the Herzog story. And, you know, if you didn't have somebody who is that insane to kind of like match the, you know, madness of Herzog, I mean, it started in 1979 with Jason Robards and Mick Jagger. And there's some scenes in Burden of Dreams of those shots of that original film. They'd gotten through about 40% of the shots when they became in conflict with the native tribe there, and then also Jason Robards, who was supposed to play Fitzcarraldo, became like very sick, and then Mick Jagger had to leave because they were on I think the Tattoo You tour or something like that. So
For the Rolling Stones.
yeah, the Rolling Stones.
Have you heard of them?
So I wanted to tell my story that I had met Sam Robards, which was Jason Robards' son. He was doing a play with Anna Lee in Ann Arbor. I think they were doing a Dylan Thomas play together, and I met him. And then I was doing Romeo and Juliet out at Meadowbrook, and they said, we're going to come out to see you. So they came out and visited, and I got to meet Sam Robards, who looked exactly like Jason Robards.
Oh, wow.
And then a few years later, I met Mick Jagger at the Park West in Chicago. And that must have been 1979. So it must have been right about the time that he either got back from Iquitos or but at any rate, I met him at the Park West just briefly. I met him and all the Rolling Stones, actually, very briefly in Chicago in 1979.
Just like backstage, or did you like hang out with them?
Well, my boss came to me and he said, "Hey, Glenn," because I had several different jobs there, and he said, "Hey, look, after the first show, we had Bruce Springsteen there, and they wanted, I guess the Rolling Stones had never seen Bruce Springsteen. They heard a lot about him, so they." My boss said, "Listen, after Bruce's first show, I want you to go back to the back door, and you're going to hear a knock on the door, and let those people in." And I went, "Well, who is it?" He goes, "Never mind. Just go back there and be back there and open the door for these guys." So I waited. Me and another guy, we went back there, waited for the door to knock, and we opened it, and there were the Rolling Stones.
And they just came to see Bruce?
Mick and the boys. Yeah, they came to see Bruce Springsteen.
So you shake their hands, or you just said hello, or how?
No, I just went, "Oh, it's the Rolling Stones." You know, it's like, "Oh, come on in." You know, close the door, and that was that. So,
okay.
That was my brush with Mick Jagger.
So, Dad, after you got basically obsessed with Herzog and Les Blank, you know, we were talking about what we were going to do for this second season of Film with Family and what would be your next film. And because it seems like every time I talk to you on the phone, you've got another Herzog or Les Blank story that you have for me. So I was like, we got to do Burden of Dreams. You had so much to talk about. And so I'll have you take it from there.
Oh, yeah. So then I called Flowers Films, and I was talking to Emily, and I was ordering some other films. And while I was ordering these, I said, "Listen, do you think Do you think Harrod would be interested in doing a podcast with my son? We have this film with family podcast that we do with family members and friend member would he be interested in something like that? And she was like right away, yes, he would love to do something like that. And I said, well, can we put these guys together? Because she said, well, just here, this is his email, just send him an email, and he's very good about responding. And then you were off.
Yeah, really cool connection. I mean, it really means a lot to me just because, I'm such a fan of both Les Blank and Herzog, and, Burden of Dreams has been one of my favorite films um for years now. And so to be able to talk to somebody so close to the film is just such an awesome honor.
Yeah, it's really big, I think, and I hope you have a great interview with him. And if Herzog ever sees this podcast,
He'd be like, who are these clowns?
yeah, with these clowns, these bozos.
What is film with family?
A disgrace
depravity.
to both films and family.
Oh, mercy, 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 Mr. Herzog.
A most obscene podcast.
Well, is there anything else that you want to say? Do you have any like final thoughts or things we haven't talked about yet?
I have to say, and this doesn't happen to me very often when I'm watching film, but particularly with these two guys, these two great filmmakers, I get emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And I can sometimes a little quiver will sneak into my voice because I really feel like we're very lucky to have people like Herzog and Les Blank,
Mm-hmm.
God rest him, in our lives.
Yeah.
So that's from my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and it's really amazing to see the contrast of the two filmmakers too in this piece, because like you said, like Les Blank is very much trying to hang back, whereas Herzog is literally cutting into the soil, like literally,
Yep.
imposing himself in a very big way. And where Les Blank's most of his films are kind of a celebration of life, Herzog definitely challenges that in this film, and brings out kind of a darkness of nature that Les Blank doesn't normally capture. But he obviously, Les Blank is doing his best to just capture what he sees and capture
Right.
what's around him, and not sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about Michael Moore earlier this year on the podcast, and it's just interesting just how different approaches to documentary filmmaking Les Blank and Michael Moore are. Michael Moore just very much inserting himself in there and making it about him, and Les Blank is like he's invisible.
And that's a real talent, to know when to hang back and to wait.
Yeah. I mean, even, some of the stuff that he captured of, like them flaying that parrot. And then there's the other scene of them, spearing the snake. He didn't agree with any of that, but he was like, I guess if they're going to do it, they're going to do it, and nothing I can really do. And he didn't, step in and say, no, you can't do that, or whatever. It's just, he was just capturing what was happening in front of him.
Yeah, there's a couple stories in Conquest of the Useless about the snake bite, and it happened to the guy was bitten in the leg by one of these poisonous vipers, and he was working with a chainsaw. They couldn't get any antidote or anything, so he just cut his foot off with a chainsaw. There's just so much to talk about. I mean, you just go on and on about, the different stories and stuff. But
Does this movie make you want to visit Peru, or does it give you a compulsion to go to the jungle?
no, I'm in the jungle, dude.
Already there, bro. Thank you for listening to this episode of Film with Family. You can find us on social media at Film with Family, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
And if you'd like to tell us about the obscenity of nature, you can send us an email at filmwithfamilypodcast@gmail.com.
And of course, you can always check us out on our Patreon. $1.99 a month, you get a bonus episode. And right now we're doing animal movies. But to tie into the special Burden of Dreams month, we are talking about another Werner Herzog movie, Grizzly Man, and also Gates of Heaven by Errol Morris. So it's kind of a documentary themed month. All these movies and directors are kind of related to each other. So to get the full experience, you got to join the Patreon.
Yeah, and once again, just gear up for this interview with Harrod Blank. I'm really excited about it. It's one of the coolest things we've gotten to do on the podcast, so you're not going to want to miss it. It's an interview with Harrod Blank, the son of Les Blank.
And he spills it all. He was very generous with his time. He was very generous with us, and yeah, it was a great conversation. He told us a lot of interesting anecdotes about Les Blank, his father. And yeah, it was a very interesting conversation. So I'm excited for y'all to hear it.
And we love the movies.
And we love our family.
Love you guys.
Thanks again, Dad.
Thank you so much.
Mahalo.
Yeah, mahalo.